Welcome, everyone, to the Cross-Cultural Couples Podcast. My name is Erica Al-Hilali.
I am Hamada El-Hilali.
Today, we're going to talk about one of the tools that was really helpful to us in navigating the two different cultures that we come from. So, I'm from an American background, and Hamada is from a Moroccan background. And while I was going to school, I was taking a class on cross-cultural management, and I came across this tool from a professor, Geert Hofstede. He's a Dutch social psychologist. He was a former IBM employee, and he created this 6D, so six-dimensional model of different dimensions of culture, and then he charts them out by country. So it gives you a great tool to really dig deep and see what's going on in your own country and then whatever your partner's country is too. It was originally created to help businesses who were expanding into new countries. So it's more written or designed for management. But I actually found it really helpful in the context of a cross-cultural relationship because it really highlights what some of those dimensional differences are and gives you a place to start to determine what's the dynamic going on in the different culture that you're interacting with. So, we're gonna talk today just about one of the dimensions. We'll go through all six just as an overview, and then we'll specifically go into one this episode, and then we'll go into the others in future episodes, just so we can give you the full information on each one.
He defines culture as the collective programming of the mind distinguishing the members of one group or category of people from others.
So it's good just to kind of determine how is he even viewing culture and in what context. So to get the comparison tool, there's actually a tool you can go to. The link is www.hofstede, HOFSTEDE insights, INSIGHTS.com and /country comparison. And we'll put the information for that on our website and on Instagram as well. So check that out. Our website is crossculturalcouples.com, and our Instagram account is at crossculturalcouples. So make sure that you check that out there. And please follow us on Instagram if you can. That's where we'll put out information like the helpful tools and tricks and tips for navigating a cross-cultural situation. So this tool is really helpful. You can actually type in your country and then whoever your partner's country is. Even if you're just dealing with even outside of a romantic sense, if it's at work or with friends or neighbors, things like that, you can type in different countries and you get side-by-side a comparison of how each country is rated on each dimension. And then it gives you some descriptions on each one. So it's a really fabulous tool, and I highly recommend it to anybody who is trying to find a way to learn about different cultures and just get some advice on just a starting point of gathering information. I also think if you're traveling to a new country, I know with the pandemic, the travel has been on hold, but a lot of us are itching to really get out and travel again.
Yeah,
I know
exactly.
I
miss my family back home, and I miss my mom and my dad and sisters in Morocco. So as soon as they open up again, I'm going for vacation.
Yeah, so definitely when you travel to a new country, even if it's not when your partner's going to, maybe you're going to have a layover in a country or something like that, you can use this tool, put in the information. It gives you some context for that culture as well. So there's 6 different cultural dimensions, and the first one is power distance. The second one is individualism. The third is masculinity. The fourth is uncertainty avoidance. The fifth is long-term orientation. And the last one, the sixth one, is indulgence. So what Hofstede has done is he puts each of these dimensions on a 0 to 100 scale. And then based on the data he's collected from different surveys throughout the world, he will rank where a specific country is at. I will say it doesn't have every single country on there, but right now they have 76. So it's a pretty good starting point. A lot of the countries are in there that you may have questions on. There may be some that you don't.
So some of them are like familiar. For example, like Morocco, the culture in Morocco is probably 95% similar to Algeria. You know, so it's like you can just look at the region, and let's say your partner is from Pakistan, for example. Maybe like the India has the same similar culture around it. You know.
Yeah, or Afghanistan.
Something close. I mean, it's not gonna be 100%, but it's gonna give you like an idea. How the result is gonna be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, if you can find a similar country that maybe has a similar religious context or similar historical or geographic similarities, that's definitely a good point. But most like I said, 76 countries are in there, so it's a great tool for a starting point for most people. So today we're going to talk about power distance. So this is a dimension that deals with how society views power should be distributed. Should it be more equal? Should it be more concentrated? And it really goes down to just whatever that society over time historically has shown a preference towards. And then those attitudes then get passed down and disseminated within that culture, and it becomes a dimension of the culture. So the way they defined power distance is the extent to which the less powerful members of institutions and organizations within a country expect and accept that power is distributed unequally. So for our purposes, we actually decided to look at 4 countries.
Those countries are Denmark, Ireland, Morocco, and the United States.
Yes.
Let's start with Denmark and see the result,
Yeah, maybe we should talk about why we chose those 4.
Okay. Well, I can tell you why we chose Morocco, because I'm from Morocco. And United States, we live in the United States, and you're American. So I can tell you why you choose those 2. Ireland, I guess you're Irish.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of Irish people in America.
Well, and my mom's side of the family is Irish, so I wanted to learn about that dynamic. Even though they've been in America for multiple generations, there's still some things that I think get passed down when you come from that culture.
Yeah. How about Denmark?
Denmark, my father's was Danish, so we decided to do that. It was interesting, and I highly recommend if you're from a blend of cultures, maybe you're an American and you're German and Swedish or whatever combination. It's kind of fun to look at this and see how different family dynamics may be playing out among the different lineages that you do come from. Maybe you're more relating just to the American across the board, and that's totally fine too. But it's kind of cool to see where did your ancestors fall on the spectrum. So we're going to talk about Denmark first.
Okay.
So this one is really interesting. So we'll talk about where all 4 of them landed on this 0 to 100 scale. So if you're closer to 100, it means you're more hierarchical. And then if you're closer to 0, it means you believe more in an equal distribution of power. So for Denmark, they scored as 18. So they're very low on this. They were the lowest one. And I think that's really interesting just when you think about Denmark, what the culture is, what their political structures are, how they do business, things like that. It's really interesting to see just how low they are on that. The other one was Ireland. They were 28, so also very low. The United States was a 40, and I think that one's interesting. We'll get into that in a minute. A lot of times people in the United States think we value equality so much, but there's other factors at play there. And then Morocco is a 70, so they're much more hierarchical than any of those other 3 countries. And we'll get into that in a second. So in Denmark specifically, they were an 18, and that puts them on the very low end of this dimension compared to all the other countries in the world, and then the other ones that we're going to be talking about as well. Some of the commentary they had in here I thought was really interesting about, this is definitely geared towards more business and management, but they talk about how in Denmark, the managers in Denmark, they don't necessarily lead in the traditional like American sense. They coach and they have employee autonomy as a higher value. So what that means is employees will work independently, they'll have more equal rights, managers are very accessible, and it's all about empowering the employee.
Well, is that because like maybe in Denmark, like a lot of companies in Denmark are like belongs to the government, and maybe there's not much pressure as the private companies, or because you can have a relaxed maybe.
Well, they are more of a socialist country, but they're a democratic socialist country, so there's still capitalism in Denmark. There's still free enterprise, but I think that the workers maybe don't have as much pressure on them. Like there's more of a safety net. So if you're a worker, maybe you can demand a little bit more autonomy. Maybe you can demand a little bit more from your employer because you have that social safety net. That's just what I would think about it.
Yeah.
Because like for example, let's say you don't like what your boss is doing, or your boss is being really strict or hierarchical, or like micromanaging you or something like that. In Denmark, if you didn't like that, you can easily just quit your job, and there's a social safety net to catch your fall. So maybe they have to do that to even just retain the employees and keep them engaged. I also think though, it goes back to, I think respect is maybe more valued, and they talk about in Denmark how employees really value earning respect by proving your hands-on experience. So they want to be able to go off, do a project on their own, do some work on their own, and then come back and show their boss, look at what I've done this good work. So even within the cultural dynamic, there's the reward for work is different. I do think though, another big piece is that there's an expectation that employees will want to be consulted. So if you're making a big change, if you're making a big decision, you won't just from a top-down approach come in and say, here's what's going to happen, and this is the final word. You're going to go talk to your employees about it, get their feedback, see what they say. So I think that this is interesting too. There's a lot of different like Danish parenting philosophies and things like that I've seen, and they really are very much against any type of punishment. Even timeouts and things like that are frowned upon. They like to do stuff. They like to really focus more on the emotional well-being of the child, and also like positive reinforcement. So if somebody's doing something good, rewarding that. So it's kind of interesting how that plays out even in a parenting sense. And I know that this is not how I was parented, mainly because my dad was sick, and then he died. So I did not get parented by my Danish parent. I got parented by my Irish parent. But I do think it's interesting. It's made me really kind of think about, how do I want to parent Sammy, our son? What are some of the Danish ways we can incorporate some things in, if that's something we value and want to encourage in him.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's also a huge focus on exploration with Danish parenting, where they want kids to be able to explore different things, go out into the world, and really experiment as children. And I think that.
But why is that? Like, I think that's what it goes back to. Like, there's like a safety net, like you said earlier. When you have not a lot of pressure on you, like the government's kind of protecting you, you can have a little bit of freedom. You can do that. But if you're in like a private company and you have to work and you have to do things, and you can't have that safety, so that doesn't let you be as free with your kids as you know.
But some would say that the government was determined by the citizens of the country. So the Danish people, that's something they valued, and they fought for that social safety net. It wasn't just given to them. And so if that's a value that's had there, then that'll be what the citizens want and require of their government.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
So anyway, that was a little bit about Denmark. We're going to go to Ireland now. So Ireland was a 28.
And the first one was Denmark was
18.
18. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So 28. Okay, so 10
so
degrees different.
Yeah, so they're not quite as on the lower end of this one. So this one is still at a 28 on the lower end of this dimension. And so they still believe that inequalities amongst people should be minimalized. So it's interesting, the hierarchy, if it does exist, it should be there for convenience. And they talk about how superiors should still always be accessible to their employees. I also think one of the dynamics that this doesn't really necessarily get into, but just from my knowledge of Ireland and how much the Catholic Church played in the culture of Ireland, whether it's Irish nationalism, just historically, Catholicism was such a major role in Irish society. And Catholicism is much more hierarchical of a religious structure than other religious contexts that may have existed in different areas. So I do think that it doesn't necessarily surprise me that Ireland would be higher on the hierarchical side than versus Denmark, just based on that legacy of Catholicism and the role of the Catholic Church in Ireland.
That's cool.
The next one we'll talk about is the United States. So this one is a 40. So what that means is that, and this one is actually interesting. So they're a little bit almost to halfway. Yeah.
So they're kind of in between.
But I think what's interesting about America is, because we focus so much on the individual and individual's uniqueness, that naturally implies that we're not all equal. Like if we all have our special talents, we all have our special abilities, we can't be equal. So and you see this, like people, I think in general in America, they value more, whether it's in business, they value expertise, they value specific ideas. Even like the whole American dream story, where you hear all of these success stories of people who were born into poverty and then they made their way up, or an immigrant who comes here with nothing or very little and they make it in America, they become a huge success. So that's not even just a value, that's something so celebrated in American culture that it impacts the way that we view this power distance dynamic.
Even like they always say, if you work hard, you should have better things than the people who don't work hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to be with equal the person who doesn't work, you know, or be equal to the person who does work. If you work hard, you deserve more than, not you deserve, but like if you work hard, you'll get more stuff. If you don't work hard, you get less stuff. So what do you
Yeah,
think?
I think Americans definitely like to think of ourselves as a meritocracy where you get what, based on your merits, like that's how the system should reward you.
Yeah.
So if you're inputting a lot of work, you should be getting good reward for that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's necessarily how it's actually playing out for people. I think there's a lot of either nepotism, where we've all seen people where their kids got a job because their parent works there, they know somebody who works there, or there's just different people out there. They already get a step up. Maybe you went to a better school district than somebody else, so you got better access to different classes, and then that helped you when you got to college, and then you were able to get into a better college, and that gives you a different network of people that you can then try to get jobs with. So I do think that it definitely is an ideal of America that we are a meritocracy, but I don't think in actual practice that's what we are.
That is true.
We're just kind of sad. So let's talk about Morocco.
Okay, so Morocco scored 70, which is higher than Denmark, Ireland, and United States.
And higher by a lot.
I know, but it's almost double even for America. Which means that the extent to which the less powerful members of institutions and organizations within a country expect and accept that power is distributed unequally. So at a score of 70, Morocco is hierarchical. Sorry, that's a hard word for me. Hierarchical society. This means that people accept a hierarchical order in which everybody has a place and which needs to further justification.
Which needs no further justification. So like,
Yeah.
So like that's where like a boss could come in and just say something,
And you just have to do
and
it.
you just accept it. And I do think that just from my interactions in Morocco, I do see this at play more. There's more of this notion that, and I don't think it's necessary. Yeah.
I agree.
I do think though that in Morocco there's an interesting nuance to it though. I feel like even like with the dynamics of the king, people expect this benevolence. So they expect, yes, there's an autocrat, but he's benevolent. Like he's doing what's best for the people. And I do say the word his because Morocco is obviously a patriarchal society. All four of these societies are, unfortunately. But I do think that there's this notion that it's almost like this dad is going to come and protect the family. So whether that's in a business sense, the whole of a country, that the king is like the dad of the country. He's protecting everybody, looking out for them long term. I think that kind of benevolence is maybe a nuance that doesn't get enough examination.
Yeah.
And I think almost it puts a lot of. I noticed that Moroccan fathers, specifically in the family dynamics, they're actually very active, and I think that goes back to the benevolence. Like, yes, they're the head of the household, but they don't have that power if they're not acting in a good way, if they're not benevolent. So, like, for example, if there's the head of the family and he's being really cheap or miserly with people, if he's beating people, things like that. That's not accepted because that's not considered a benevolent ruler. So I almost feel in some weird way that like there's almost more pressure on the men to act even better than because they have the power. So because you have the power, then you have the responsibility to use that in a good way.
But a lot of that power actually is changing. A lot of women right now, like even my mom, she has so much power in the house.
It's true.
A lot of women of my friends, mom, they all have like their words is like really strong in the
Mm-hmm.
house. Um, but yeah, you still like Morocco scores 70, so there's a lot of that. Oh, there's a boss coming, or oh my God, there's the boss. So whatever the boss says, we just have to do. There's no caution. There's no. We're always gonna find exceptions, but there's always that mentality of oh my God, there's the boss. We have to be careful. We can't say this to the boss, or
Yeah, and I think in relationships, this comes up where I've seen this happen to like I won't name names or anything, but just different Moroccan men who I've seen once they get married and then start having kids, suddenly they're like taking life more responsibly, but they're more like serious suddenly. Like they'll be like they need to like really be responsible because they're now like the head of the household or whatever. And I think that
yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with how the gender dynamics, and I think your point that it's changing, that women are getting more power in
But still,
Morocco.
there's still like there's a lot of progress to be made, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of progress that has been done, especially by the king. He has done so much to give so much right to women, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah, I think like even like the Modawena, which was
yeah.
probably like 20 years ago now, like 2001 or something like that, is a new law that happened in Morocco with the new when he became king, where it gave women a lot more rights in like trying to get divorced. They have more legal rights in a lot of different ways. And also, he's done stuff like he's said that the you can't have more than one wife. So historically, you could have more than one wife in Morocco. The crown lets you have four, so that was the max you could have in Morocco. But
But even though like
the way the king overturned it, I thought was so smart and interesting. He said so there's a verse in the Quran saying you could have four wives, but you have to treat them all equally. And so the king said, well, there's no way that the one man could treat all these women equally. So we're not even going to give him the option. So you're going to have one wife, and that way you're not going to get in trouble, because you're not treating them equally. And I think that was really such a interesting way that he did that. So,
yeah, it's good.
but I mean, you do have plural marriage in your
In
family
my family.
background. I don't know if you're gonna talk about that or not.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, my mom's dad had three wives, and they all had one floor.
Yeah, so
And
each wife did and their kids.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can actually when I was young, I really didn't know what was going on in the whole place. But as I got older, I started to understand what's going on, and then you can see sometimes there's like kind of a tension in there. I mean, three women living together and like they're all in one floor, all those kids. I'm sure there'd be some tension, but
And how many kids did your grandpa have?
like
19?
19 or 21, 19 of them,
Yeah, 19.
19. So, but yeah, think about 19 kids running around the whole house
Yeah, that's pretty
with
crazy.
three wives, and but they all had their own like floors, but you can go from one floor to another, you know. So, but yeah,
For me as an American, that would be really hard dynamic. I don't
I
think I would
know.
do well in that dynamic at all.
It's just even like in Morocco, like it wasn't really common. Even like my friends' grandpas or so, they never. I didn't see many people with that many wives. It was really rare.
Yeah. Well, that was your family in Casablanca, but your family in Beni Malal in the Atlas Mountains,
Yeah,
they had one wife, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And he died. My grandpa, she died when she was young, and she never got married or anything.
On your dad's side,
Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, that's a good point too. How your grandma Aisha, she was living up in the Atlas Mountains. Your grandfather died, but she still had all these, younger kids to raise. And she, as a woman, as a widow on her own, was able to, raise her kids, keep her family together, keep the land and the house and everything. So
You know what's crazy? They all joined the military. Her kids.
Yeah.
They're all dead, and he was like, all of them has 25 and more of service with the military.
That's cool.
It's just crazy.
Well, and I think that like that was probably a good way for like your dad and his brothers to all get educated and serve Morocco too.
It was good. It was really good.
So
But
well,
yeah,
and I wonder too though because that side of the family is all in the military. I think even in America, if you're in like from a military family, just in general, you'll be more hierarchical because the military tends to be a hierarchical organization. Um, and so I wonder if that plays into some hierarchical notions or not, but it kind of gets mitigated by the fact that your grandma was a widow on her own, so there wasn't necessarily as much of the male dominated hierarchy on that side of the family.
yeah,
But
that's true.
yeah, so I think it's interesting to think about these different. This first one, the power distance dynamic. Obviously, there was a lot of differences here, and you can really see how the different political contexts, the other values may impact this. So, like America values like individual uniqueness really highly, so that plays into that issue of equality. And just the history of Morocco being a monarchy for so long. I mean, they've always been a monarchy basically in some form or another, and how that dynamic plays into the whole of Moroccan society as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us, like now as a couple, we can think about these and see, okay, how do we view this? How does this impact our parenting with Sammy? How does this impact, like, for example, how we discipline him? I will say Moroccans are way stricter with their kids than.
Yeah, my mom would just throw a shoe on you if you don't shut up.
Yeah, so, but I think that goes back to that hierarchical society. Like, the parents are the boss, and the kids are the kids, and like, there's that line. And where on the Danish side, the opposite side, there's basically no discipline, and you're supposed to try to foster the positive qualities in your kid and let them make mistakes and let them try and fail. So I do think that that's kind of interesting to see how those different dynamics play out. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Morocco, my dad actually was really like not as strict as my mom. My mom was the strict one.
that's true, yeah.
My mom was super strict, and
But I wonder though how much of that had to do with because so Hamada's dad was he served in the military and served in the Sahara Desert for 10 years.
yeah.
So he was away for a decade.
Well, he'll come back after like every 2 months or every 3 months. He'll come back and stay for like 10 days or 15 days, you know?
But it's not the same as like the day to day. Your mom was always there every day.
Yeah.
So she had to be the disciplinarian because your dad wasn't there. So I wonder how much that played into it too.
Yeah. But yeah, she was really strict. But as I grew up and I knew what she was doing, I was like, oh wow, she was just actually trying to protect us. So.
Well, I think that goes back to even that benevolence of like, yes, she was strict, but she was looking out for us. Like that's kind of that power dynamic in Morocco where it's like, yes, you can exert your power, but only if it's for the long term good of the people. So.
I think that's it.
Yeah, so this was fun. I know I learned some things about Morocco and the different countries. I highly recommend you taking a look at what Hofstede has to say about the different countries. In future episodes, we'll go through the other 5, which are individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgence. So look for those in future episodes.
So there's 5 more left, right?
Yes.
Cool.
And make sure you reach out to us if you have any comments about this. Feel free to subscribe so that you can hear those future 5 dimensions. And then reach out to us. We'd love to connect with you, hear your own stories, hear what's resonating with you. If there's topics you'd like us to talk about, if this was helpful to you, please let us know. We would love to hear it.
Yes, we do. We'd love to hear from you. Again, take care, and I hope you're having a great day, and we will talk soon. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye-bye.